Welcome everybody. Before I introduce our guest, we have a fabulous video that actually Kim Larson on our team found of our esteemed guest. So if you want to take a look, it's about 2 minutes long. It'll give you a flavor for what you're in for today.
Dog goes woof, cat goes meow, bird goes tweet, and mouse goes squeak. Cow goes moo, donkey goes bray, and the elephant goes toot. Pig goes oink, fish go blub, and the seal goes ow, ow, ow. There's one sound that no one knows. What does the fox say? Ring ding ding. What the pig say? What the fox say? Hotty, hotty, hotty ho, hotty, hotty, hotty ho, hotty, hotty, hotty ho. What the pig say? What do fox and pig say? The secret of those guys, ancient mystery, somewhere deep in the Capitol. I know you're listening. What is your sound? Will we ever know? Will always be a mystery. What do you say? You're my politicals, watching after me. What is that sound? Will we ever know? I want to know. I want to know. I want to know.
Why did you let the door open? You would have had to open it.
You're like, just keep it coming at me.
So what happened with this is it was kind of fun, and you know, and I probably should say that, you know, sorry Dave, but you know, it isn't your show, okay? But we're gonna have some fun today, okay? But what happened?
I'll get in about 5 words.
Yeah,
in the whole hour.
but what happened is part of this should, you know, really should be about building your brand, okay? And our brand is Foxy Pig and Nellie. And but what happened is we hired these smoke machines to have this, you know, smoke coming out. Well, unbeknownst to us, it set off the smoke detectors in the Capitol building. So they had to evacuate the entire Capitol, the governor, everybody else. And so anyway, the fire truck shows up, and I'm kind of going like, I think I better get out of here. But you know, we have all of these very dynamic, you know, attractive young, women that work for us. And a lot of them are Aggies. And I said, just take care of these guys. And I thought for sure I was going to get a ticket, you know, written up. But they show up, they, you know, Cole, can we get you a soft drink? Can we get you a cup of coffee? And they charmed the socks off the fire marshal and, you know, the superintendent and the colonel of the highway patrol and on and on and on. So kind of thought like, because I expected a ticket. So a couple of days later, we get the video. It's right before Christmas. And I'm sitting over at the governor's mansion talking to Governor Herbert. And Governor Herbert, he's kind of a musical guy, and he kind of likes doing this and that and the other. And I said, Governor, you know, do you want to see our Christmas video? So he's, you know, playing on his phone. He's tapping his foot, going da-da-da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, the fire truck goes, so you're the guys. He said, I was interviewing, you know, candidates for the Supreme Court, and I was supposed to go to D.C., and I had to vacate the office. And he said, oh, well, go, you know. So anyway, that's the story of the Christmas video. It cost me probably, you know, we had to hire the guy to sing, but it probably cost me $2,500 to do that video. And I have got more value out of that video because people see it and like all of a sudden, like Kim found it and I mean, and people really like it. And the other thing we do really is kind of cool is we do cool Christmas cards and as Dave knows and Ross and others, we do kind of cool Christmas parties too. And part of it is the gathering and getting people together and keeping your clients happy. So anyway, Dave, back to you, sweetheart.
So I had this great opening.
Now, do we have fun Dave today, or do we have boring Dave today?
Boring Dave
Okay.
today. That's what you
know,
get.
You poor guys. I mean, last week you had a Nobel Prize winner, Lars Peter Hansen, okay? I mean,
You know that guy?
Yeah, we were students together. And some of us, we kind of thought we were smart, but then Lars started taking political science classes with us, and like he was somewhere between Kolob and Pluto. I mean, brilliant, brilliant. But I want you to know, and we always teased him he was going to win a Nobel Prize. In fact, Ross and I nominated him for a honorary doctorate. I'm glad we gave it to him before he got his Nobel Prize. Cool guy, but you know, the stuff he talks about, I mean, it's I don't know, it's nonsense to me.
I don't
but,
understand it either.
Oh, good. I know there's 2 or 3 of you here that really think
There's
they
a couple of
understand it, okay?
economists in the back that have to interpret that for me.
Well, they play like they understand it. You know, I was here and had a couple of really great economists. One guy was named Reed Dershey, phenomenal. I love the guy, I revere the guy. And but then there was this guy who had been here literally for 42 years, and his name was E.B. Murray. And tragically, he got Parkinson's, not like in Paul Parkinson, but Parkinson's disease. And he'd get up there and shake his finger and say, you are the victims of 42 years of a misspent life. And actually he was very good, but you guys today are the victims of 68 years of a misspent life. But anyway, let's keep going.
All right. So Doug called me a couple of weeks ago to make sure that we're still doing this. And he said, we're still doing this on Friday the 24th. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, I was supposed to be in the Maldive Islands.
Yeah, so this...
You know anybody raise your hands. Where are the Maldives? Anybody know? Dr. Peterson in the back. Between India and Madagascar, way out there, lounging on a beach. So we're happy that you came here instead of a beach.
I don't know, this
Maldives.
commitment thing is kind of tough. Because, you know, this year my travel goal was to visit all of the island nations of the Indian Ocean. Okay? And I mean, I'd been to Sri Lanka right after Christmas. But then I said, all my friends are going. They said, well, you need to come with us. And I go, no, I committed to do this thing in Logan. And they said, no, you need to come. And I said, no, I committed to do this thing in Logan. And then, you know, a couple days ago, another friend of mine calls and said, yeah, we're flying back on the plane. We're going to go back to this car show in Kansas City and da-da-da, come with me. And I said, so Dave, you're ruining my life, dude. But what you don't do for friends, okay?
It's my way of getting back because every few months I'll get an email, and I think Ross is on that email list too. Several of us will get an email, it'll be from Doug, be all these great pictures from somewhere around the globe with a little history. This is where Doug is. And I'm always so envious. I'm like, I want Doug Foxley's life.
You know what?
Tell me,
you know what? I want my life.
2016,
I want my life, okay? I mean,
how many countries were you in 2016?
49, I think.
That's last year.
Yeah, but there's a reason for this. So I had to ask you, what is your passion? Okay, what is your passion? So, what is your passion?
Our passion is working right here for
No, what is
us
your
every
passion?
single
With
day.
Dave.
There you go.
Sure
See,
he's happy.
Okay, what's your passion? Sports, okay. Who else has other passions here? Well, my passion is sports, but going to Bear River High School, where I was, the offensive center, middle linebacker, we played Logan High School, and all of a sudden I have this genetic freak playing against me by the name of Phil Olson, Merlin's brother, All-American, played for all these professional NFL teams. And he outweighed me by like 140 pounds, and he was like, 5 inches taller than me. So I knew I wasn't going to play in the NFL, okay? And another passion of mine was travel, but I didn't want to, get on tour buses with the little old ladies and walkers. So I thought, well, if I'm going to travel, I'm going to do this. Well, my other passion was politics, okay? But so anyway, so last year, one of my friends calls and says, Doug, he said, I want to go to Monte Carlo to the Formula One race. And I said, do you want to go? And I said, sure, I want to go. And then this other friend of mine, and I was on the board of his company, he was one of the two guys that owned Maverick. And anyway, he bought, after they sold Maverick to Crystal Call at FJ Management, he bought this big farm, ranch, vineyard in Spain, just north of Barcelona in the Pyrenees. And he wanted to have me come over. So I had 2.5 weeks. Either I could have come home or I could have done something else. So I decided that I was going to visit every country in Europe that I hadn't visited. And so I did that, and it was kind of cool. I mean, and there are some really awful places in Europe. You guys all go to the cool ones, but if you want to know what Belarus is like, I'll tell you someday, okay? It's like going to the Soviet Union, but anyway. Sorry, Dave.
So before he completely takes over the show, let me just introduce Doug Foxley. He's an entrepreneur, and to me, he operates at right between the nexus between business and government. It's a very interesting place to be. He's also served on the Utah State Board of Regents, which is the body that governs all the public higher education institutions in the state. And he was chairman of the Utah State Board of Trustees. And last spring, Utah State gave him an honorary doctorate. So before Doug starts rambling too much, let's please welcome Doug Foxley to the leadership.
Oh, thank you. So, you know, I was actually a student with Douglas Delano Anderson. And Doug actually, as a freshman, was, accepted to Stanford. He went to Stanford, and anyway, I came back after a couple of years from Norway, and he came back, and so I met Doug. And I mean, a good guy and a brilliant guy. And anyway, what was kind of fun is, I went on and I couldn't decide whether I wanted to get a PhD or go to law school or do this or that and the other. And, Doug, graduated from Utah State, got a master's, and then he went back to the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. And there's a reason I'm telling you the story, is after that, all of a sudden he had some friends, and he started taking classes and doing things in the business school, and one thing led to another, and all of a sudden Doug ends out, at the Harvard B School and HBS. And it was kind of cool. And then anyway, Doug comes back to Salt Lake, because Doug had always wanted to run for the U.S. Senate and ran, and his timing was bad, and also he was a wrong party because he was a Democrat. But anyway, but it's okay. But if you go to Harvard, you can work in the Reagan administration, okay? Because there's some feeder system here. You talk about the good old boy system. But anyway, so I'm on the Board of Regents, and a good friend of mine, this guy named Ian Cumming, and he's the president CEO of two New York Stock Exchange companies, Leucadia National and PhilCorp. And anyway, he was asked to chair the search committee for the new dean of the business school at the University of Utah. So he calls his buddies at Harvard, and they say, I'm looking for a dean. He said, well, your dean lives in Salt Lake City. And he said, well, who's that? He said, well, it's Doug Anderson. And anyway, for various reasons, Doug wasn't chosen. And so anyway, I'm on the trustees, and when Karen Beck Dudley, when she resigns to go to Florida State, and President Albrecht says, well, Doug, what do we do? And I said, well, look, your dean is on the board of trustees with me. It's Doug Anderson. I tell him that story. And so, President Albrecht goes after Doug. Doug tells him no, tells him no, tells him no. But finally, there's Catholic guilt, but the Mormon guilt, it's almost as good as the Catholic or the Jewish guilt. And finally, Doug did it. But I have to tell you, and I'm sorry Doug isn't here today, but what an amazing guy, and what he has done here, it's been transformational. And I do a lot of work with the Huntsmans, and John and Karen are dear friends of mine, former neighbors, and they love so much what's going on up here. And the beauty about what Doug and Dave and so many others here have done is the Huntsmans' view that their view is we get more bang for our dollar at Utah State than any other place we give money. So anyway, big shout out to Doug. And by the way, I've worked with I think every billionaire in Utah. Someday I'll tell you billionaire stories. They're all unique. Let's just put it this way. In fact, what is it? What is it, Dave? If you're poor, you're strange, but if you're rich, you're eccentric.
Something like that.
So okay. Anyway. So back to you, Dave.
This is what it's like. You get a call and he doesn't say hello, he doesn't say it's Doug, he just goes right into these stories. So
Well,
tell me.
I only have so much time in my life, Dave.
True, that's true. So what's the typical day as a founder and managing partner of Foxley Piganelli?
You know, every day's an adventure because you don't know who's going to call you with a problem. One day when my kids were young, somebody said, well, what does your dad do? He said, all we know is that he sits in his office, talks on the telephone, and drinks Diet Coke. Okay? But, you know, I mean, so I don't know. So like yesterday, I get pulled into a meeting by a whole bunch of successful Aggies. You know, Jonathan Bullen, graduated in history, very successful. John Miller, I think, was up here yesterday. Graduated in history, you know, Deloitte, you know, good friend of mine, graduates in history, you know, so Ross was an evil influence. Ross, if you'd been over here instead of there, just think how much more money those guys would have made, you know. But instead of digging through the tomes. But anyway, so what I do is I meet with people during the day. Always have a lunch with somebody, and I'm a problem solver. And I don't know what's going to be thrown my way any day. But I get paid to do the deals the easy deals I don't get paid to do. I get paid to solve the hard problems.
So we're going to come back to that. Let's go back to your upbringing here. You grew up over the mountains here.
Yeah, well, you guys call this the Wellsville Mountains. They're really the Honeyville Mountains, but keep going.
So, Tremonton.
No. You would say that
I know how to say it.
You would say that I went to Bear River High School. I didn't go there. I went to Bear River High School, okay? It was a great place. That's one of my tribes, okay? And it's a proud tribe. And, one of these days you need to get my good friend and freshman roommate and dear friend Lynn Rose, who was a partner at Goldman Sachs, and you need to get him here. And then you can talk about ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. So anyway, but...
We're going to talk about
yeah,
Lynn in
yeah,
a minute.
anyway.
So what were your early years like out there? And
Well, look, everybody had it bad, okay? You don't want to know about all the awful jobs that I had, okay? But I was actually a pretty lucky guy because in Tremonton, there were 2 white-collar jobs you could get in high school. And I got one of the white-collar jobs. It was pretty cool. I was a bagger at Safeway stores. So every day I had to put on a white shirt and wear a tie. So I had a white-collar job early in life. But, I've had these terrible jobs. Like one summer I had to work on the state road, and you dreaded weekends because people would hit deer, elk, and moose and cows, and you'd have to go pull them off the road and stuff. So the good thing about summer jobs, Dave, is they were always an incentive to come back to school.
That's right. That's right.
And someday when you guys are kind of bored, and you're not each other, and you're actually talking to one another instead of, you probably ought to have a contest to see like who has the worst, summer job. By the way, I was coming up here today, and there is something that you guys should do. I'm dead serious about this. Every year, all these student body officers and all these hottie-toddies, they go down to the legislature and pass out Aggie ice cream and whatever, the President Neil tells them to do, they try to do. But, it's nonsense. Why don't you do something that's worthwhile? Okay, like today, I am driving up through Sardine Canyon. I know you all go through Sardine Canyon, and all of a sudden, unless you're brain dead, you go 60 miles an hour, okay? But if you don't know it, then a certain...
Did you get pulled over?
Well, no, Mayor Johnson pulls you over, okay? So let's see, the mayor who is the highway patrolman, if you guys are related to him, I'm sorry, but it's tough. But anyway, so somebody got pulled over. And I was just thinking, why don't you guys really do something to help the students at Utah State and future students? Why don't you go get a bill in the legislature to raise the speed limit through Manaway to like 65 or 70 miles an hour? It's a controlled access highway. Look, I mean, that would do more to, to help students with tuition and housing costs than anything else. No, think about it, okay? Solve problems,
I'll pass
okay?
that on.
Yeah, I'm sure you will, okay?
So let's talk about Lynn Rose. So you ran for student body president of Burr River High School.
Yeah, well,
Did you win?
well,
He told us to remind you of that when he heard that you
okay,
were coming
so,
here.
so what happened is at the time you had campaign signs and you put your pictures on them. And look, I mean, Ross Peterson's from Idaho, and I probably should be, on the Idaho license plates. It says famous potatoes, but mine should be like famous potato head, okay? So anyway, I had my pictures on my signs, and Lynn, who was still a beautiful man, okay? He had his, the girls stole his pictures. They didn't, mine were up. I think finally my sister's friends kind of ripped a few of them off for, just to make me feel good. But no, I didn't win, okay? But life is good,
So
I don't have to plan the high school class reunions,
There you
okay? Of course, Lynn doesn't come, so anyway,
No, that's right.
we have our own, so anyway.
So
You guys probably won't have them, because Facebook, think about Facebook. Well, I don't know if you'll have reunions. I don't think, like your parents and this and that and the other, but you stay in contact with the people you want to stay in contact with. I don't know, anyway. Go ahead, sweetheart.
So Utah State,
Yes,
from Bear River to Utah State.
yes.
You're a political science major.
I was a political science major like Deloy and Doug and Deloy. Yeah.
So did you know that that's what you wanted to study? What was your experience here like?
Okay, so I was asking you what your passions were, okay? So, sports, but knew I wouldn't be a football player. Travel, but kind of wanted to do it on my own terms. Politics. My father was in the legislature, and he was the mayor of the town, and this and that and the other. So I was interested in it. But, I came, and I was just kind of floundering as a freshman, and I took a political science class from a guy named M. Judd Harmon, who was the, head of the political science department, later the dean. Brilliant man. Dresses almost as well as Dave Patel. And anyway, it just kind of lit a fire, and then my dad, through some connections, I went to D.C., and all of a sudden, I'm working in this congressional office as an intern. There was really the first crop of interns that ever went to D.C. for the first class. And there was this guy named Ralph Meekum, and he was the vice president of Anaconda Copper. And he had a black limousine with a limousine driver. And every day, not every day, but often he'd take us out to Congressional to play golf, and we'd go to nice restaurants and baseball games and this and that and the other. And so I'm kind of saying to myself, this is a pretty good gig. How do I get that? So that's kind of why I came back and majored in political science. Graduated, liked it, stayed on for a year. I was a graduate assistant to Dan Jones, the pollster. Thought I might go on and get a PhD. Started a PhD, but the war in Vietnam was winding down. There weren't any tenure track positions. So I went to work for a friend of mine, running the political operation for the Utah State Auditor. And what had happened is, all of a sudden, I figured out how to privately contract and get rid of about 80 employees. And so what happened is I saved the office $1 million the first year. And this was in the late 70s. And all of a sudden, the personnel office came in and said, because you're not supervising as many employees as you were, we're going to cut your salary in half. And so, I kind of outfoxed them. I just went upstairs and got a Bill Rand exempt, political offices from, the personnel office. But I kind of decided that's when I knew government wasn't for me. So, anyway.
So government wasn't for you, but you're doing government relations. So after law school at Utah, did you know that you wanted to start a lobbying firm?
Well,
at a time when, if I remember right, there weren't that many lobbying government relations firms in Utah.
Well, there weren't any. So what happened, I always thought I was going to go to D.C. But what happened is, when I was in law school, I was the chief deputy of the lieutenant governor's office. And the state moved to annual sessions of the legislature. And I said, I think there is a need for companies and entities who'll need somebody to represent their interests doing governmental affairs, but they haven't got somebody full-time. And so I kind of said, I think I can do kind of the DC style practice of law in Salt Lake City. But none of the law firms wanted to do it because they didn't kind of catch the vision of it. So I went and did it on my own. My very first client was NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, paid me $750 a month. But that's kind of what I took the jump with and said, I think this will work. And I mean, I did divorces, bankruptcy, criminal defense work, all this stuff that nobody wants to do, the miserable practice of law, but all of a sudden it took off. But part of this is I was married, you know, had a child, and I'd lay awake at night worrying about, am I going to be able to pay for the mortgage payment the next month and whatever the case may be. I didn't sleep for about the first 4 or 5 months. I mean, and then finally I kind of go, well, I had money this month, and I think I'll maybe have it next month. So finally, all of a sudden, you kind of had to have faith in yourself and faith that it was going to work, and kind of finally it did work. But the other lesson I kind of learned is I always figured out to pay myself first. So as a self-employed guy, I'd always put the maximum amount of money I could into my retirement plan. And I always figured that, you know, because you could do it, you could defer it from income. And the other thing you could do is, it was kind of my emergency fund. If all of a sudden things went wrong, I could pay the penalty on it, and I could pay off the mortgage on the house, and, you know, I could be a night clerk at Little America or something. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So always pay yourself first, okay? And if you're going to take risk and go into business, what happens? A lot of people talk about it, but what I found is if you don't do it by a certain age, like about mid-30s, you're not going to do it, because after that you get too security conscious.
Mm-hmm. Your risk exposure goes down. So when did you? How did you meet Frank?
Oh, gee.
The pig of Fox and Pig.
Well, there was a trial lawyer, a plaintiff's lawyer in the legislature, a Republican, and he was doing all this anti-business stuff. And so Pignanelli was running against him, and so I went and said, look, if you're not a crazy ambulance chaser who's going after business, I'll support you. And I did, and he ran. He's got a great story, I'll tell you about that, but anyway, that's... But you know, but I was doing this long before he was there. He didn't come with me until 1997.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, from our perspective in the business school as business students, you know, it's a classic entrepreneurial business you've got. So one of the things that you started doing back then and still do every day is, you know, client acquisition.
Oh yeah.
So how do you go about, besides this fabulous video that we saw earlier, how do you go and get clients?
Well, you know, I don't really go after them.
Yeah.
They kind of find me. One of the things I've done is hired a ton of students from Utah State and also the University of Utah. Give them a great experience and then help them find a job. L.J. Godfrey, who isn't here, but you know, he runs governmental affairs for AT&T in D.C. now. He worked for me, got him that job. But so a lot of my former students are great sources of business to me. Kind of having, you know, been involved and run campaigns for Senator Hatch, you know, Governor Huntsman, Governor Herbert, on and on and on, Governor Bangerter. You meet a lot of people. And so kind of from that, you know, people kind of know who you are and kind of seek you out. And but the thing of it is what I think we do really well is we keep our clients. And we keep our clients happy, and our clients are our friends. And
How do you do that?
oh, first of all, you're always
It's a competitive work environment, right? There's
yeah,
lots of
but you're always watching out for them. And we do social things with them, and we're kind of their eyes and ears, and we let them know about bad things that could happen to them. So yeah.
One of the things that we talked about a few days ago.
Hey, but before we go there,
Yeah.
So I have this delightful Irish Italian, you know, Catholic partner, Frank Pignanelli, and he's 4th generation Utah, and he's kind of a funny guy, okay, But anyway, he doesn't get this Aggie thing, okay? So I gotta read this to you, okay? So just one quick second here. This is kind of funny. Anyway, I think it's funny. You may not think it's funny. Okay. So Pignanelli, you see, only a non-Mormon can get away with this, okay? He goes, a lot of people think there's a cult in Utah. You know, there is, but it isn't the Mormon church, okay? So this is the definition of a cult. A group of people exhibiting misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular thing with practices regarded by others as strange. He goes, you guys that go to Utah State, you know, you're a cult. He goes like, I went to the University of Utah, but what are you? You're Aggies, you know, I'm an Aggie. Like, you know, I don't go to the University of Utah. And he goes like, and then what's this thing about kissing something on an A and doing things on a bull and on and on and on and on. So anyway, you are a cult, embrace it, enjoy it, okay? My first anchor client was actually a guy named Jed Pitcher. He was president and CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield, and he hired me because I was an Aggie, and he knew me and knew the family. But anyway, in life, I mean, I do a lot of work with my Aggie friends. And I mean, Roger, too, the executive director of the Utah League of Cities and Towns, you know, met him. Jonathan Bullen, I'm on the board of some of Jonathan's companies. I've invested a lot of money with Jonathan and John Miller and others. And anyway, so you got something that's kind of special here. So, you know, don't tell people about it, but just embrace it. Anyway, back to you, Dave.
No, I mean, that was what I was going to ask is, you know, part of that is those relationships over years. And part of it is to be able to tell our students today that, so you went to school, as you talked about earlier, with Lars and with Doug and Deloy and Jonathan. So, and you still keep in touch with them. You do business with a lot of them, right? And so for our students, I think it's instructive to say, you know, the people sitting next to you in class, you know, that's the beginning of your network, and some of that will last a lifetime, and it can lead to phenomenal opportunities.
So I do a lot of work with a company called Woodbury Corporation. You probably wouldn't know who they are, but they're probably the largest developer. They own probably more real estate than anybody, except for probably the government, the LDS Church in Utah. And they decided to put together this real estate fund with John Miller and Jonathan Bullen. And they asked me if I wanted to invest in it. I'm kind of going like, duh. I mean, I've got, you know, 3 groups of people that I know, trust, and respect. I mean, it was easy and it was very worthwhile. And so, you know, and then they kept giving my name out to other people. And I said, look, I mean, if I'm going to trust anybody, it's these guys. So yeah, I mean, it's been a good deal for me. The other thing, though, you have to take a look at is potential opportunities. And Ross Peterson and I are the only 2 guys who were at Promontory Summit on May 10th, 1869, when they drove the Golden Spike, okay? Which was that's kind of where 2 railroads came together. Anyway, and so I've represented Union Pacific. I've been kind of in-house, out-house since the early 80s, since I worked with Governor Scott Matheson. And I found some things, like if you put goods on rail, if you're sending stuff over about 200 miles, it's far cheaper to do it by rail than by truck. And then one day Union Pacific introduced me to this client, and they were in the waste business, and so I started doing a lot of work for this company. I was kind of in-house, out-house counsel to it, and then finally Union Pacific bought this company. And so one day I'm looking at environmental regs, and I'm seeing that in RCRA, which deals with the handling and disposal of waste, that they had all these proposals to basically put restrictions on landfills, garbage, where you put garbage. So I started thinking, we've got all these coal trains. At the time, that was bad, but that was before coal was bad. They've got all these coal trains that are sitting unit trains full of coal to the East Coast and the West Coast and on and on and on, but they're coming back empty. I said, we got all these landfills that are going to be closing. Why don't we start sending waste back in these cars? And so anyway, I found a friend of mine. He went to Utah State. he was an engineer, and we met. We were delegates for Ronald Reagan. You guys don't even know who that is, but anyway. But we went out and bought 4,200 acres of ground out in East Carbon, Utah, and built and permitted a large, well, the country's largest rail-served landfill, 2,400 acres. And I called the president of this waste company, the old CEO, and I said, do you want to come in? And so the three of us put this thing together, and it was a pretty successful venture, and we became the largest client in the state of Utah for Union Pacific Railroad. And finally, the railroad wanted the business more than we wanted it. But there's a beautiful thing. It's called a royalty, okay? That mailbox money, enjoy it. If you ever get it, enjoy it. So anyway, Dave, back to you, sweetheart.
So all of these clients, so from John
Yeah.
Huntsman to Brad Call or Crystal or and your friends like Jonathan and John. So you've come into contact with a lot of great leaders. So are there some themes that emerge in your relationships with them that makes them? This is a leadership forum where we try to talk about what some of the traits are of successful leaders.
So first of all, sometimes you're with some people and you just know they got that special something. Steve Creamer, who was a partner of mine, who went on and bought Energy Solutions, on and on and on. I mean, Steve, he's a visionary. He's got a phenomenal personality, and he can sell anything. So I wasn't ever going to get in Steve's way. We kind of complemented each other, and I was kind of his control device. Like in Maverick, Mike Call was the president, but he kind of was the guy that just did the numbers. But Brad was a marketing genius. He's the guy that came up with Adventures for a Stop and all the cool stuff that happened with Maverick. And so what happens is if you're with your friends and acquaintances, kind of figure out who does what. And all I am is I'm kind of a guy that puts people together, and if somebody needs a CFO or somebody needs a marketing director or somebody's, it's kind of know who does what and get out of the way. So Crystal Call, and you guys met Crystal Call Magalet of FJ Management. I totally adore Crystal, one of the neatest individuals ever known. But one day I was talking to Crystal, and I said, Crystal, she was just, her and her husband Chuck, who's now the president of Maverick, they were just kind of running the Crystal Inns, and all of a sudden, Phil Adams, a kid from Brigham who was running, Flying J, they overextended, got into a credit crunch, and so they had to take the company into bankruptcy, and that's when Crystal kind of took over. I said, well, Crystal, why when you had a chance, you could have crammed down all this debt, why didn't you do it? And she said, because that's not the way my dad taught me. And so they paid off all of their creditors 100 cents on a dollar. And she begged Scott Anderson at Zions Bank and others not to, sell their debt off at a discount, which they did. And so when Crystal went in to take the company out of bankruptcy, virtually all of the judges in the Delaware Chancery Court came because they hadn't seen anybody do this since the 1980s. So look for people with integrity, look for genius, and like for instance, I was on the board of Maverick, and it was a good little company. I knew someday we were going to be bought, and I was getting shares of stock as compensation, and but I found out that a lot of the family members from up in Star Valley were wanting to buy new pickups or ATVs or fishing rods or whatever the case may be. So I started buying their stock, and it was a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
So if when you see things, when you see an opportunity, seize it.
Right. So let's have some questions from our audience. Any questions from?
I'm sorry, but you can't answer your phone. No,
He's the guy with the mic. Go ahead.
Is that why you wore the white shirt today?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
White collar job.
Yeah. Don't smash my bread or my eggs, would you?
Okay.
Dave, I'm insulted that you think I actually need a microphone to project. 2 questions for you. One, what are you looking at that picture right there? Because you're staring up. Like, are we gazing in awe at something, or what are we doing over there?
Who knows? Who knows? It was the backdrop of the Capitol, and a friend of mine. She's a great lobbyist for Citibank, and gosh, she refers a ton of clients. Her husband was a photographer, and he goes all around the world, and he was shooting pictures, and I don't know. You know, it's probably the only one when I wasn't falling asleep, you know.
Fair enough. Second question is a little bit more serious. You talked about finding people who have integrity. What's your litmus test? Because I think everybody kind of has their selling point, whether it's power, fame, whole ton of money, or whatever else. What's the litmus test to kind of find out how far you can trust people?
That is a really, really, really good question. I would tell you that, first of all, if somebody tells you they're honest, they probably aren't. Okay. Secondly, you kind of, whether it's Cache Valley or Salt Lake or wherever the case may be, we're still pretty small insular communities, and you kind of know of people before you know them. Like, for instance, Woodbury Corporation. Woodbury Corporation is now into the 5th generation. And in that history of the company, they have never, ever, ever defaulted on a payment to partners or defaulted on a loan payment. So to me, that's a pretty good litmus test of somebody that, you know, that I can deal with. And even though a lot of them are very bright lawyers, the thing I always like with them is when we're meeting with various individuals, and they say they're going to do something, they do it. So part of it, I think it's an evolutionary process, and you see how people deal or don't deal. But if you see people who are too anxious to do a deal or a little sleazy or the deal changes, you run from them. So, you know, because it's your reputation. The other thing that's nice about making a little money in life is you don't have to take every deal. And also you can tell people what they don't want to hear. I don't know. That's,
cool. Thank you.
That's somewhat circular, not totally responsive, but I'll ponder that more.
I guess last question for you. How long have you been calling Dave sweetheart?
Just today.
Just today. I'm glad your wife's not here, Dave. Anything, look, you got to do things for shock value, okay? I mean, got to keep you guys awake, you know?
As someone who,
Okay, what is your name?
I'm sorry, I'm Jamie.
And Jamie who?
Jamie Crandall from Reno, Nevada.
Jamie Cradle from Reno, Nevada. Let's hear it. So Ross Peterson says if you know geography and genealogy, you'll be a success. Okay? So what you guys need to do is get to know one another. But anyway, all right. So, okay. So what brings somebody from Reno, Nevada to Utah State?
Actually, the School of Business was kind of the main driving factor. At the time, I was looking for a strong international business program and a strong Spanish program, and it's actually kind of hard to find two strong programs on the West Coast. So that, in combination with the Huntsman Scholars Program, fell in love with the town.
Great. Great. Anyway,
But I'm curious, as someone who loves the DC environment, I'm curious if you'll expand a little bit more on the vision that you had to bring that political environment to Salt Lake, kind of what you saw and how you did that.
so I'm in DC a lot, okay? Next month I'll be there 3 times. But I also figured out that you kind of have to be there to totally play in the town. So I have people that work for me in DC with various clients that I deal with. And I love DC. I probably could have been there, and I probably would have had 7 wives and children, you know, not at the same time. And kids whose names I didn't even know. But I kind of, that's one of the reasons why I didn't go, and I didn't like the commute. But going there enough kind of satiates my, you know, my DC fix. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, like, you know, you financial guys, it's New York or London, but, you know, for me, it's DC.
All right, thank you.
So do we get the Aggie ice cream early or late today, Dave?
Late.
Okay. All
You
right.
get your sugar fix late.
All right.
You're doing pretty good right now.
All right. Well, I guess think we've bored them to death. So
Any other questions? So one last thing, I know we've talked about that a lot, and something that you feel is important, not just in your professional life, but what you see with this generation. We talk about this a lot, right?
So what's my idea of a perfect vacation? it's a place where these damn things don't work. So, a few years ago, my son and I decided we were going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And anyway, so we go to bed early. We get up, because the scree is freezing, and we go up this. Has anybody here climbed Kili? Anyway, you ought to do it. Do it when the full moon's going, okay? So you don't have to wear the lamps. So anyway, we go up, and all of a sudden, you think you're going to die, and all of a sudden, the full moon is setting, the sun is coming up. Here's the glacier fields and the big crater of Kilimanjaro. There's that pre-dawn light. It's like cool. So, there's me and, my Sherpa and my son's Sherpa, because you have to take him up. And then some jerk from Brooklyn shows up with a satellite phone and wants to call the world and tell him he's on top of Kilimanjaro. And I'm going like, do you want to use my phone to call home? No, I don't, but anyway, but it's tough to find a place where a cell phone doesn't work.
Yeah.
But the other thing, guys, all kidding aside, is I know it's fun to text and all this other stuff and FaceTime and on, but it's personal communications. You got to talk to people. You got to talk to people. I mean, with all of my clients, I talk to my clients some daily, some weekly, some at least every 2 weeks. And I talk to my friends a lot. I mean, that's the beauty of driving. I mean, who needs to listen on the radio? So talk to people, okay? Anyway.
Any questions? Any other questions from the audience?
You guys have been patient. You've been awesome. Anyway, thank you very much for. Oh, yep. Whoa. Don't feel obligated, okay?
My name is Christiana Miles, and I am not an Aggie, but I really want to be. And seeing the camaraderie between Aggies is really incredible.
We adopt Aggies, okay?
Okay.
We adopt
Good.
Aggies. You get adopted into various houses. You can be adopted into the house of Aggies.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Can you make a couple of book recommendations?
I saw that on the David asked that question, and I'm in this book club with a whole bunch of judges and lawyer friends, and I said, like, book club, that's kind of, and I said, so can we come up with this name for this book club? They go, well, yeah, let's call it the Manly Book Club. And I'm going like, that's the world's most awful name. So anyways, the business me. So I am the worst person in the world to ask that, because I do not read novels. I love to read good history, good biographies, and thought-provoking books. And so, I mean, like a couple of years ago, I mean, I reread, the Hamilton biography because of what's going on with Trump. I just read John Meacham's Age of Jackson, which I think is fascinating. So it just kind of depends on the moment, but I'm always in the, like Ross and Dave and others, I love books, and I travel with my Kindle, but I just love turning the pages. And so I'm a dinosaur. I still buy books, but anyway, I don't know. What have you read lately that you like?
I'm currently reading Checklist Manifesto, which is a good one. But I have a lot of favorites. I like to dip into different genres. So.
Well, that's the nice thing about a book club. The other thing is, I mean, I love reading the book review sections in both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. Because,
What do you read daily? Journal?
read the Wall Street Journal. I used to make fun of my friends at Utah State who were reading the Wall Street Journal, but I have to read it because it's the world I live in. And then I read, and we represent the Salt Lake Tribune and the Deseret News, and so I read the Tribune and Deseret News every day, and then I have all sorts of news feeds, but I actually read the hard newspapers. My papers are delivered about sometime between 5:55 and 6:02, and I'm out on the driveway when they drop. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you for this.
Thanks.
Enlightening and I think people have not laughed this much in this forum ever. So we will never have you back because
Good, good. Because I'm going to
that's not the
Madagascar,
purpose
okay?
of this forum. Thank you, Doug.